Lead Girl, the Be Well podcast is your dedicated platform for amplifying the voices of Black women in various roles, whether you're a teacher, school leader, higher educational professional, or educational consultant.
Join us as we honor the stories of remarkable Black women and share insights from our distinctive journeys in education and life.
Tune in as we explore the topics that resonate with us as women, as members of the Black community, and champions in education. Welcome to Lead Girl, the Be Well podcast, where we amplify the voices of Black women in educational leadership.
We are your hosts, Trelane.
Dr. Mac.
Well, we made it to the end of May. Oh my goodness. Cannot believe that we are at the end of the school year. And it feels good.
Feels good.
Yes.
I hope it's okay to say that.
We can celebrate that. That.
We have to, because we are part of what I think is one of the greatest professions in the world, regardless of all of the stuff sometimes. But it is a beautiful thing, I think, to be an educator, and just thinking about all that we have the opportunity to do, to bring to students, to bring to families, to bring to communities, in so many different ways, in all of our gifts. So while I love having the time in the summer, it doesn't mean that I don't love, this work as much, as much as I know that our guest does today as well. Just talking to her in the pre-show, it was so evident that this is really, really in her heart, which is so awesome. So I want to tell you all about her. Her name is Jessica Lamb, soon to be Dr. Jessica Lamb. She threw that in the pre-show, and I was like, I didn't get a chance to say anything, but I was like, okay.
You should Dr. Lamb.
We're working towards it.
That is right. That is beautiful. So today we're going to talk about what it takes to build strong instructional cultures where educators and students can thrive. That's one of my favorite words. Anyway, joining us, Jessica Lamb is an organizational consultant and founder and CEO of Lamb Consulting, based in New Orleans, with more than a decade of experience. She specializes in instructional coaching, talent development, and systems design. She partners with schools and nonprofits to strengthen strategic planning, build equitable environments where students and teachers are getting what they need. She also delivers professional development that enhances staff culture, leadership effectiveness, and also organizational stability. So today we're going to talk about instructional coaching, teacher retention, leadership buy-in, differentiation, and building systems that really support teachers in the classroom instructionally, which is where all the magic happens. And also, she's going to give us a couple of little tips about being a Black woman on this entrepreneurial journey of educational consulting. So I'm looking forward to that. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you all so much. I'm so excited to be in this space. I just told them earlier before we got started, my first podcast.
Well, we are so glad to have you on today. So, Jocelyn, you want to kick it off for us today?
Yes. Welcome again, future Dr. Lamb. And, we want to get into this from educator to entrepreneur journey. And so, you spent some time within schools, of course, before launching your consulting company. Right. Can you just kind of share what unearthed really your consulting passion?
Yeah. So first, thank you both for allowing me to be your last podcast of this, year, the school year. This is really exciting. This great first question. I have to say that my first experience with, I would say, from instructional coaching to talent development, workforce development, all stem from my first teaching job in Moorhead, Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta. And while I was teaching in Mississippi, and for context, I was teaching in the Mississippi Delta, which is a very rural area. And so the majority of schools within the Delta are rural. And things that stuck out to me immediately was I had so many impeccable teacher mentors around me, whether it was Miss Cocroft, shout outs to Miss Cocroft, who was down the hallway teaching third grade ELA, incredible teacher to, and I would name this, and I want to name this very explicitly, the amount of incredible paraprofessionals that we had in our school. And I would say schools when I think about the district. And one thing that struck me was being aware of paraprofessional salary and teacher salary, right? I was a new teacher, I'm making, new teacher salary. And knowing that paraprofessionals were not making as much within the, in comparison to the teacher role. And I would see paraprofessionals whose classroom management was on point, who had their lessons internalized, et cetera. And the only real reason that they were not teachers was because of the praxis test. And when I moved into a director of talent role, I just kept thinking back to the Delta and just the amount of incredible teachers, overwhelmingly Black women, overwhelmingly older Black women at that, who gave so much within the community inside our schools and outside, like the amount of hats they wore, especially as a rural school. There's a lot of sharing of responsibilities and taking on a variety of roles, and just always going back to that. And I will always be just thankful that my first teaching career was in Mississippi, was in the Delta, specifically in Sunflower County. And I think when you work in a district and area that historically been neglected, it not only gives you a lens of how messed up things are in terms of systems within education, but you also just get to see the incredible, immense work that people put into their students, regardless of what resources are available. And that's what I saw a lot of. So when I think about instructional coaching that I do now, and I think about the talent development work, strategic planning, it all is in that same vein of seeing teachers, paraprofessionals, school leaders do incredible work within our schools, in our school communities, and working with what they had.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I don't take excuses lightly when I hear, and I was saying this to Chelaine earlier, when I hear people say, well, those kids can't learn, or, those are your kids, and et cetera. I just don't. No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, absolutely. What an interesting jump off to your educational journey,
Yes.
your career journey. And I, I'm the northerner here, so
I grew up in Ohio, so yeah. World.
Yeah, so it's very, very different, and just to even imagine what that's like for students in those areas. I've read about it, heard about it, etc. But to be able to be in those contexts and really see the real work. We're all doing work, but when this, it's a whole different kind of work when you're battling socioeconomic and racial disparities, all kinds of things, right? So it elevates it in a whole different way. And those paraprofessionals, shout out to them. Yes. I just yesterday, so funny, like little aside, but I was at this birthday party and I met this teacher who is actually working at the same school that I started teaching at.
Oh.
And she said, my former paraprofessional is still working there.
Wow.
And she just raved about how amazing she is. Yes. And she totally is. But it was just a reminder, just as you were talking, I was like, the value that we don't place on paraprofessionals and other support personnel. We need to fix that in so many ways. But so I appreciate that you mentioned that. And as you were talking too, I was just thinking about our next question. We've got schools in so many different contexts, and when we talk about equity, we could go from here to eternity with the different types of resources and access that folks have. But what it also kind of speaks to is sometimes this resistance to change in schools. And COVID did a number on us, and it forced us to change some things, forced us to look at some things. But even still, in the quote unquote post-COVID era, we still have trouble with change. We kind of sat back and kind of got back into some things that we used to do before COVID. So why do you think, based on what you've been working with, why do you think this change is so difficult in education, even though people realize that we need to improve things?
Because it's easy. I truly
Done.
think it's easy. Like I think about from school leaders to assistant principals to sped directors, and people are busy. Like I
Mm,
go into schools and see the school principals taking on a meeting, then they have to go to this building to be in this training, and then they have to do this. Like I mean, just busy the entire day. And there is such little allotment of time
mm,
for quite a few, I would say, administrators to even be creative.
Mhm.
Not even that they aren't creative, it's just with what time do you get to just sit and imagine and create what you really want
mm,
without then adding on to it what are financial restrictions that could exist. As I've seen, my own hometown district has had massive budget cuts when they consider what could be potential like blowback from key stakeholders. Um, and considering also mindset work, depending on what their ideal would be for a school, growth mindset has to be important to that. And also just the idea that this change can be worth it.
mm,
And the opportunity cost that I think some folks might do. I'm just like, I already have this limited time. So is it worth it to then, maybe have to have some intense conversation with key stakeholders or the school board? Is it worth it that other people might be uncomfortable rather than just me, like the outcome of that? So I would love more of the creativity personally myself, and recognize that some folks don't even have the basic freedom of time
mm.
to consider what
Wow.
it can be.
Yeah, no, that's real. That is real.
Yeah.
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 I think there's other things too, but that's my main one. That's one that I almost like, I wish y'all had
Yeah,
more time.
for sure. Yeah, that's always an issue. Time.
Yes. Yes.
Never have enough of it.
Never have
Mm-mm.
enough of it. No.
Yeah, but so we're gonna go kind of shift from that, the resistance, to
Sure.
talking about culture with the implementation of so many things. So even with
Mhm.
change, or even with their own initiatives, a lot of schools have their improvement plans or their goals for the year that they're aligning to district goals, or even just their own internal ones within the district.
Mhm.
Sometimes they often focus on these programs and these initiatives, and oh my goodness, have I seen an initiative go through so many times but failed because of culture, not necessarily in
Correct.
place. And you can have the greatest idea out there, and sometimes you're just not successful with the implementation of that idea, if the foundational pieces here. So
Right.
can you define for us, like, why do you believe culture has to come before strategy? And also just kind of define, like, what is instructional culture for those who may not fully understand we're talking about culture.
Yes. No, these are great questions. The first point of why culture has to come first is, and I think specifically of school culture, and school culture is very unique compared to corporate culture or just like non-education workspaces. I always say that schools and teachers have to have these professional jobs that really cross into personal spheres often, like thinking of the information you take in constantly from your coworkers. Like you really depend on folks, right? Like there's a certain bond and energy that you have within a staff culture in a school that just isn't, I would imagine, isn't easily replicated in other workspaces. On top of the fact that you're with your students for such a long time, you develop your relationships with your students, you develop your relationships with your staff. And on top of that, if you work in a school in which you've had students that have experienced trauma, you're also taking that on. You're taking on very personal stories and grief and just all of these things. So I always say that even school cultures, period, are just these very unique ecosystems because of the level of emotions, scenarios, feelings that just occur within this one building or multiple buildings or campuses. And to that point, the reason why culture is so important is because the actual impact that the culture has on students is tremendous. Like, I don't think, I'm thinking about dissertations right now and still wonder if we could ever quantify. I know we can for some things, but to quantify the impact that adult culture and staff culture truly has on students. Like, we're talking students' trajectories. I was reading, I'm going to be upset if I can't remember the name of the book, but Hanashek, who is an American researcher and has studied schools in the US and abroad for years, he had named how there are students who make hundreds of thousands of dollars more based off of high quality instruction that they get from, and it could just be from a singular teacher. And that's why culture is so key. Like, when instructional culture, for those who are wondering what I'm talking about, is what are the expectations and norms that a whole school staff has regarding how you teach, what do you teach, who you teach, the different ways that you differentiate instruction to serve your different populations of students. And you go into schools and there could be such a variance. And I think a lot of schools can relate to that. I think a lot of leaders, instructional coaches can relate to it, that there could be some variance on that. And the culture is really what informs that. Culture is what gives the norms of this. This is how we teach here. This is an example of how we teach. This is an example of how we don't teach here. This is an example of how we speak to students, right? This is an example of how we do not speak to students. This is an example of how we create belonging in our classrooms. And when you either have not had those conversations within your staff, whether that's professional development, whether that's your newsletters, whether that's how your weekly meetings with staff or one-to-ones, when you don't have that, that's when it's left to interpretation. And that's when that variance grows. When you leave very important pieces of your instructional culture up to interpretation, then you're messing with students' achievement and growth outcomes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That is so profound, and you know, as when we were first talking, I was like, instructional culture. I don't know that I have really framed it that way before, but it's so true. And as we, you know, when you think about consulting, and you know, as a leader, you know, we're always looking to see, you know, there's someone who can come in and like support, you know, the learning of our teachers. And so when you start doing your consulting engagements, I'm curious about how you begin to identify, you know, the right problem, or sort of what is that thing where they need to begin the conversation. What does that look like for you?
I've heard people say this before. I remember I had a school leader say this, where they could walk inside a school building, and within the first 5 minutes get a sense and a read for staff culture, which then you can delve deeper into the instructional culture. And I think my twist on that is sitting in a hallway. I love to do work in a hallway, in a school hallway. I like being visible. I like being in the classroom as well when I do that, but I like being visible, and that's always been the case for me as an educator and when I became an instructional coach, et cetera. And I truly believe that actually being in classrooms, it doesn't even have to be a formal evaluative visit, but just simply being in the spaces, in the hallways, seeing departments, can give a really important read on if what you're seeing in one classroom is typical for the others, speaking back to that culture piece. And when you're able to do that, it's fun. I think the fun work is when I'm able to kind of be on my own and do that kind of research on my own, and then talk to the school leader and compare notes, is fascinating, because for a lot of them, they know that, but just aren't able to be in the classrooms as much as they would like to be. But from what they've gathered, whether it's from their weekly data meetings, PLCs, conversations they hear, you know, all of those, you know, different forms of data, they know more often than not, it is known what is going on. Yeah.
That's helpful.
And sometimes it helps that when a third party who's not in the weeds can stamp exactly what they are thinking, or that they have already named before, but maybe it wasn't taken in the same way because they are the school leader, they are the SPED director, they are the, you know, chief academic officer, whatever the title may be.
Isn't that amazing? I always talk about how like
That's
you
true.
might have the expert. I mean, same for me. You may have the technology is my background. So of course,
Yes.
I have all types of ideas when it comes to technology, but because I was a director of, digital learning, listening to me didn't, wasn't
Came from
always the
you.
first. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it was received differently when it came from others, or you built that culture around. And sometimes people don't realize that you build capacity within others, which is you doing
Right.
the work to help kind of strengthen it.
Right.
But I always talk about this. So it's funny that you brought that up. So I
Hmm.
love that.
Yes, and
Now,
I named for them too. Like, if you want me to say it because it might come off, just let me know. Just let me know. I will
But
happily.
here's the other part though. It's like when you unearth something that they didn't know about, and something you say, well, have you looked at X, Y, and Z? And they're like, huh? Why? Everything is great. What are you talking about? What are you seeing? Has that come up for you?
Oh yes. Oh yes. I think especially after classroom visits. I remember this was years ago. I was visiting a school, and the school leader wanted me to visit three specific classrooms that they identified as their kind of highest bar of instructional rigor.
Mm.
And visited each classroom and truly only felt like one of those actually met the bar, and was very disappointed in the other two.
Mm.
I just didn't think it was rigorous. And these were advanced placement courses. And
Mm.
I just plainly thought this wasn't rigorous. I remember there was a segment on parenting styles. I think it was like AP psychology. And I was thinking, oh, this is so fascinating. Like, every student has an access point to this. Like, everyone has an opinion
Mm.
about parenting styles, regardless of if you're a parent or not, just thinking about your own upbringing. And it was just very rote. Like, this parenting style is da 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 da. Students would
Mhm.
answer. Next question, students would answer. And I was thinking, I want to hear like students' opinions on this. Like, do they think there's a parenting style that's better? What have they experienced? Like, there's ways to really pull out student lived experience. And so I went back to the school leader's office, and they were so excited. So I felt a little bad because they're like, what did you think? And I told them honestly, I don't think it was that rigorous.
Mm.
And here's why. And I always include data. I'm not going to say something and not include data. So
Mhm.
I stamped out of, I think that class, it had no more than 20 students, but I named out of 20 students in the classroom, within the 15 minutes I was in there, I only heard from 4 of them. And it was for rote answers.
Wow.
I didn't see any student collaboration regarding this topic, despite the fact that every student actually has an access point to
Mm.
this information.
Mm. Yeah.
And I mean, frankly, they weren't happy. But I also understood that I think their upsetness, I think, came from the cascade of what are all the factors I would need to do to address this, which all stemmed from instruction, right? And I think
Mm.
that for that particular admin, they knew how to handle when it was classroom management, when it was a technical skill like instruction, and particularly within their band of advanced placement. I think that was a really tough thing to ponder of how
Mm.
do I solve this.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
yeah, well, there's this buzzword that we hear all the time. I think
Just
if
one?
I, you know, if I had $1 for every time we use this word in education, and we're talking and we're giving, motivation and even reporting on data, we talk about tier 1 instruction. I'm like,
Ooh.
We love it. We love it over here.
oh my goodness. And I just think about like, I always think that the preparation schools for teachers didn't really prepare you for the reality, because like a lot of these buzzwords you
Mm,
don't really know what they mean. And so when you have administrators coming to observe you, rate you, and giving you feedback, and they're using this jargon that sometimes has different perspectives based on who you're talking to and what
right.
school and environment and what the instructional strategy and perspective is, on tier one instruction and how it should be implemented. And so for our listeners, and I would just like to just know, what are some common misconceptions they have about tier one? Well, educators have about tier one instruction and differentiation.
Oh, this is great. Is this podcast 3 hours so we can dive all the way into it? So I would say some of the biggest misconceptions I see about tier one is that it not being viewed as universal features that students should have access to. So, for example, when I think about when there's flexible grouping and that you can do small groups regardless of your student makeup. I've always taught overwhelmingly, majority of my career has been in inclusion classrooms. My first 2 years were not inclusion classrooms. But regardless, me as the teacher throughout all of those years of teaching should know that I can pull a small group because I know that's going to benefit my students. And I notice that there's a group who might need a little bit more one-to-one with me where I can help reteach this concept, right? I think about, and I had mentioned this to Trelane earlier, that it is completely okay if you give all your students graphic organizers. That could be very helpful as they try to, put together their essay or their paragraph or their written response, that they have a space where they can kind of organize their thoughts. Like we as adults often need that. That's why we have so many organizers, notebooks, like all of these things to help us organize our thoughts. I have so many tabs open all the time, right? Like these are things that all people can have, access to, and that it would help. And I think that tier one sometimes is ignored of those strategies to just go right into tier 2 and 3 for those who they identify need it. And I told Trelane that I have seen this when I've done some coaching, is this over referral of students who seemingly are getting referred because they're having behaviors that seem to be stemming out of boredom and lack of accessibility. So when you don't understand material, when you feel frustrated that you're not understanding a concept, those are the things you do. You're not paying attention. You might talk out, like all of these different behaviors that then are tagged as they have a problem. They need da 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 da. And it's like, well, have we tried to provide wait time? Have we done some collaborative group sharing? Have we done some turn and talks? Have we given do we have anchor charts available for students to reference to? Do we allow, I think about this a lot and coach about this for some of the teachers that I support with certification here, which is you never have to wait until the exit ticket has been given out to correct an error that you are seeing throughout the class as a trend, right? Like as you're circulating, if you're noticing that the majority of students are just getting this one part of your question, whether it's a math question, ELA, et cetera, wrong, you can bring them all back together, name and stamp what you're seeing, and reteach it, and then release them back. Like we can do that. And so tier one, it seems that there tends to be some real confusion that differentiation doesn't exist in tier one. And that when you're actually providing scaffolds like the graphic organizers or providing calculators, that is only supposed to exist within like RTI and tier 2, tier 3 above accommodations, instead of considering all students can benefit from this. You can give this to all students. Manipulatives in math, like I taught lower elementary, love them, and helps so many students. And I also consider this. I remember thinking I was bad at math starting in 4th grade. And it was mainly because it was taught one type of way. If I had learned math, especially fractions, because fractions is what got me. I remember it was like mixed fractions. I was struggling. If I had some manipulatives, if I had just been taught like different ways that you can find an answer, which I think is way more common now, I probably would have eventually gotten it. but the way I was taught was just one way. And so I just assumed, oh, I'm just bad at math. Okay, this isn't my thing. And I think tier one is like that when it's only being taught one type of way, and we're not incorporating our teacher tools of how we can reach across learner variance, their preferred learning style. And I was telling Charlene about even how students like receive and express language, right? Like those are key because we're communicating all the time in classes. So those are just some of the things I think about. My long answer in regards to tier one, I think there's a lot of confusion that those scaffolding and differentiation and universal tools for access aren't supposed to be tier one, that they're supposed to exist separately within tier 2 and 3.
And so therein lies the need for instructional coaching.
Yeah, which is fun. That's the fun part of the work.
Yeah, and one thing I don't know if I mentioned, but I was going to say that what I find also a little unfortunate is that instructional coaching is not standard in every school and district and system, and it really should be. You know, the leader of the school may be an experienced teacher, but they're also evaluating. And it is a really fine line to walk when you want to coach teachers and you want to support them in trying things out, taking a risk, seeing how it works, doubling back, talking about it, say the next strategy. Like I love coaching. I've never been an actual instructional coach, but I've tried to approach leadership that way. And yet and still it is really tricky because you are supervising and evaluating that person as well. Yes. And so it's hard for both parties, I think. And so, you know, you have you've been doing the instructional coaching, and now you're kind of on the other side and coaching from a broader lens. But when instructional coaches are present, they're often stretched pretty thin. You know, Definitely. There's one reading coach, one math coach, or maybe there's one coach for all the subject areas, right? And so schools really have to work hard to maximize the use of that coach. Like, what does that look like for you in terms of coaching and supporting the schools who do have instructional coaches?
Yes, that's a great question. I often have this answer ready because I always let school leaders know. And they're like, well, we already have instructional coaches. And I said, yeah, I'm not meant to replace them. I'm here to work with them because I know that there are academic initiatives that you have, thinking about what you said, Dr. McDonald, about districts have these plans, there's strategic plans, there's portrait of a graduate. Like I see that way more often now. And everyone's clear. There's these 5-year plans, 10-year plans that are very much already set in stone. We know the curriculum that is being taught, you know, like all of these things. And to your point, Charlene, is that instructional coaches are stretched thin. One math coach, or here's an elementary coach for just this school, here's a middle school coach. And there's just, in order to truly coach for improvement and consistency and support, you need to be able to be in their classrooms often. And I think that's the crux for a lot of school-based instructional coaches. And especially if you're in a district instructional coach, that's multiple schools that you have. Like you definitely cannot be in those schools as much as you want to, or the way that it might be prioritized because of, you know, the number of instructional staff is that you kind of have to make choices. Like, who do you prioritize? Do I prioritize the teachers that teach the like the test subjects, right? Like state tested. Do we just focus on the teachers who need the most support because their classrooms right now are on fire? Do we focus on the folks that we really don't want to lose? So, or they teach a subject they realize it's really hard to fill. Like there's all of these, you know, priorities that people are juggling when it comes to instructional coaching. And at the end of the day, even when you prioritize it, that means that someone else isn't getting coached. And then when we think about what that does to instructional culture, staff culture, that variance pops up a lot more. That's when you might have someone who could be an incredible teacher who might be in their first year who's like, I'm not being coached, so let me go somewhere else. You might have a teacher who is strong, but just because you're strong doesn't mean you don't need coaching, because we all need coaching for teaching. That could be, well, I'm not really invested in, so I just kind of do my own thing. Like, there's so many ways that this plays out. And because of my talent work, I always think about teacher retention all the time. Like, we have a teacher shortage. And if you have a great teacher, if you have a teacher that grows quickly, who takes feedback, your school and district isn't the only person who notices that. So do other schools, so do other districts as well. So do other people who are hiring, who aren't even in education at this point. So we have to look at instructional coaching as a means to student growth, as a means to student achievement, and also a really important piece of your talent development as well. Like, when you build instructional coaching into your strategic planning and into your true kind of core of your school's functions and systems, it really does a lot in showing your staff you're invested in them. And I do always think that has a positive impact on teacher retention and recruitment too. If you're able to tell, and I think about this with my role when I was a director of talent recruitment. In the role that I had, I was able to tell people, you're going to be coached regularly. Like, someone will be in your room. There is a culture of, don't be surprised if your school leader walks in. It's not a gotcha. They just want to do it, right? And I've been in schools where that's not been the norm. And the vibes did not feel that great, because there is this kind of culture of like, why is this person in my room? I don't want them in my room, right? And it shouldn't be like that. School shouldn't feel like that. Shouldn't feel like that.
Agreed. Thank you for that.
Yeah. It shouldn't feel like that, but sometimes, going back to culture, I think that's part of that instructional culture is like, because I think about myself, and I didn't go to school to be an educator, right? It's just, I got into it, started subbing, and ended up teaching and doing an alternative certification. But I didn't know what the norms are, because it seems like it is a gotcha sometimes, because the way the response is, or no one ever kind of just makes it a norm intentionally, unless they're, I guess, being intentional. But from my own experience, I never really had a culture that tried to make it like this is a norm. I think that a lot of times they wait until they see something wrong, or an experience that they're starting to lack, and then they want to address it, versus it being the norm from the beginning. And I think that, because then you don't have to worry about, someone walking in and saying something. Is that should be a norm from day one, and embraced, and shown as support, and not, because that's why I think it feels like a gotcha. Because sometimes they don't think it's an I got you. I don't think that administrators try to do it as an I got you. But sometimes it comes off as one if you're not fully invested in making that part of your instructional culture of, sharing, learning from each other, growing, developing. And so it makes it hard sometimes.
And if it's not communicated as a priority, right? Like, if you haven't heard it from school admin, like, this is something that we do. And we do this here because we want to see your growth. We believe in building your capacity, right? Like, and on the talent side, I have talked about this, which is building the capacity of your staff means that awesome teacher that you're thinking about, that teacher that you've seen that's grown a lot, I would much rather them stay in my school and become, let's say, like a reading interventionist, if that's what they so choose, or desire to be a curriculum director or an instructional coach, then leave and go to another district. Because if they are choosing those roles, that means that they have felt and seen the investment that we have put into them. And they are choosing to continue to work here, whether they want to stay teaching, which I highly recommend, or they're choosing to go into another position within your school. That's showing a lot and saying a lot about your culture of investment when you do that. And I think instructional coaching really does that. And, this past month, I've been in a few schools and have done some live coaching, and teachers being like, Are you coming back? I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Like, are you gonna be here next year? Because I really enjoyed that. That was fun. And again, because it's not evaluative, I just want to give you some tips so you feel good and be like, oh, that is easier. That is a much easier way of doing this. Right? Or like, I like how my students responded to that. Let me make sure I add that. Let me add that to my routine. Like, that's why I'm here. And so I just really love working with schools that maybe that hasn't been the priority, but they want it to be, or it is a priority, but they're just like, we don't have enough people to get this done right now. How can you
Yeah,
help?
it is such a, I didn't really think of it so much as a retention tool.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean,
Mhm.
if somebody can talk about their instruction with someone who gets it, who has done it or is doing it, it really helps with their own morale and their level of
Absolutely.
investment in the school, right? It's like,
100%.
okay, I know that I have someone that I can bounce an idea off of in real time and maybe even see them implement that
Mhm.
strategy, right? Like
Yep.
it is a great retention tool. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Well,
talent development's right there.
I think you have the next question. I think.
Yeah. So the next question is talking about representation.
Mhm.
So
We love it.
um, we talk about representation and underrepresentation, I guess in this case, um, as being, I guess, a Black voice in education. How do you
Hmm.
feel that it impacts solutions that schools may be open to receive when representation isn't necessarily always represented? How does it
Oh,
affect?
that's a great question. I think I, as a Black woman, am always aware of my positionality. And I think about the last like full-time role I had in which I would go into different school communities. And it was actually to specifically name and try to support students getting access to advanced placement who historically were marginalized and not getting quite that access. Black students, Latinx students, students experiencing poverty, students with exceptionalities. Like four, I would say at least four groups that were historically not represented in their respective communities, advanced placement courses. And I recall doing a facilitation at one school, and it was clear, oh, you don't usually hear any type of expertise from someone who is Black, and it is showing. Like, and I could feel it. And I like to say I'm a pretty self-aware person. I was like, oh, this is different energy. This is different energy. You are not used to the person who is giving expertise or advice coming from a Black person, let alone a Black woman, let alone a Black woman who's in their 30s. Like that's just not that's not the norm. And being able to read body language, I was able to tell like that's okay. All right. That's not it. Now, thankfully, um, all of the school leaders and superintendents I worked with were on board because that's why I was there. But working with whole school staffs, and I think that was another really helpful experience in terms of thinking of instructional culture was there are students who are not in these classes. Why? And there were surveys that were given out to kind of find students and kind of name it. But it was always so remarkably fascinating to be with the staff and ask them why do they think students aren't enrolling and hear responses that could range from, oh, I think there's students who don't feel like they belong, their friends aren't in these classes, they're not hearing about these classes, they only see maybe only see certain types of students in the classes, so they might automatically count themselves out, which yeah. But I'd also hear responses like, well, they don't want to be, they're lazy, their career path, they don't need to do that. And I would always have to name advanced placement. Anyone can do this. Like this is not a student saying that they want to be a welder doesn't mean they can't take AP chemistry if they want to take AP chemistry, right? I remember my hairstylist. Shout out to Red. Red is a chemist because she's coloring hair regularly. So we're telling someone who wants to be a hair colorist they can't do AP Chem because they don't want to go into engineering or work in a lab in a hospital. You know what I mean? It's like, what are we doing? Why are we being barriers? I'm not gonna say we because I wasn't a parent, but like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? So I know for a fact that there were people who did not want to hear what I had to say, and that was fine. I also thought it was incredibly important that there was quite a few schools that reminded me of my own school community in town that I grew up in. Shouts to Lorain, Ohio, but that was overwhelmingly Black and Latinx, and had a sizable white population as well, but was diverse, was racially diverse, and I could see myself and I could see my friends and I could see people that I grew up with as neighbors within that school community. And it would just always trouble me when I would see folks within the staff not have that same care and humanity for their students and kind of view them as this incompetence. So I'm like, they're kids. Like, when do we assign incompetence to children? Like, what is this? What is this? Yeah. So I'm very aware that as a Black woman, and millennial, I'd say millennial at that there are probably immediate attacks that will be put on Black women regardless of the spaces we walk into. And I think that providing an expertise within a what's the way that I want to describe this? Providing expertise that is outside of classroom management is incredibly important. And I think when we are showing examples of expertise within the academics, within instructional coaching, I think some people just haven't seen that and they don't know how to take it. Right? Or they kind of want to fit in a box of what that is. So I always think it's so important for Black women in any academics, anything school related, but to really name your experiences and expertise, because, and I was telling Trelane this, I am so proud to have grown up in Lorain, Ohio, because I grew up in a diverse school community. That's what led me to become a Spanish major. That's what really supported me in my work in the Delta. That's why students related to me. That's why I was able to talk to parents. That's why I was able to build trust within my students and my families. That's why even now when I go into school communities, I can build trust pretty rapidly as an instructional coach, because I lean into those lived experiences and just having good vibes and humanization of people. Like, I don't, like, that's so important. And somehow that gets lost sometimes for folks.
Yeah. And we have to find it.
Yeah. Well, I just had a conversation yesterday. So it wasn't a school event, but sometimes you have your communities that try to connect with schools and have these events and do things around coding and AI. But sometimes the representation of who's leading those spaces for our kids is difficult for our kids to stay engaged with. And I don't know, I was going through this experience yesterday with my own daughter. So it was a coding event, and want her to enjoy the things that I love, but also will prepare her for the future. And I think STEM is really important. So we did this community event, but the instructors that were there were culturally different in how they explain things. And I could see, kids losing interest. And I think I was just telling one of my colleagues, I was like, it's really important for us to have representation here, because this is why some of our students don't have opportunities or know that they have these opportunities, because they aren't able to connect with the instructor. But the instructor also gets, sometimes, especially when I think it's culturally, especially if you're coming from out of the U.S. and you come into an American school, the experiences of what school looks like is a little bit different from other countries who may have more stricter experiences, expectations here. And so your patient isn't as wide range to deal with students who disengage, because you're expecting them to sit, listen, and know. But a lot of times, you mentioned this earlier, is that behavior when they're bored or if they don't understand. And I think a lot of times our students, our teachers or our educators, we pass over that part and we're quick to label them. But they probably didn't make the right choices, but it probably stemmed from them being lost in where they were supposed to be, what they were doing, and now they're doing something else and now becoming disruptive.
Correct.
And I think representation matters in that sense, because I don't know that everyone is able to capture or see it from that lens. And so, you
Right,
know,
right. You
and
just made me think of a couple of things. There was a student I interviewed. I hope they're doing so wonderfully now. There's a student I interviewed a couple years ago, and it was to ask why they weren't in an advanced placement class.
Hmm.
And the student told me they were a native Spanish speaker, and that they had taken like a Spanish, like a maybe introductory, like Spanish, 1 or 2, something like that. And he had the most specific example of why he has not taken AP Spanish, because he would be completely fine in AP Spanish. He said that there was a quiz he had to do, and one of the words was to write what bus would be in Spanish. And the student was Salvadorian and said that it was guagua. That is how their family has always referred to bus, the school, like any bus, guagua. And the teacher said it was wrong.
Ooh.
And this was not a native Spanish speaker. And so the student was saying, like, how are you going to tell me I'm wrong? Like, this is how my grandma refers to the bus.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I refer to the bus. You're saying it's wrong? And the teacher is like, yeah, it's wrong. And that student told me, that's why I'm not taking AP Spanish.
One
Why should I?
false
So I can
move.
be told that my vocabulary is wrong? And I was like, I can't even argue with you on that. I understand how
No,
you get that too. I would
absolutely.
get that too. I'd be
Absolutely.
furious. I'd be
Yeah.
furious. And I was just talking, and this is something else, but with the training that I was in this past week for some of our new teachers who are going to be getting summer school tomorrow, shout out to Teach Nola, we're talking about students who might not be on grade level, let's say with an ELA. I'm coaching ELA teachers for the summer. And one thing that I said, if we're thinking about the level, like the text level, lexile level of, let's say, Romeo and Juliet, we may have students who have not achieved that lexile level yet. But what we can't say is that students don't have opinions and couldn't access the themes of loyalty, family conflict, having a crush on someone. What do you do when your friends are mad at you? What do you do when unexpected things happen in your life? Like, these are all themes that students could access and talk about
Absolutely.
and relate to. So while that lexile level might not indicate that they'll be able to read Romeo and Juliet easily, that doesn't mean they can't participate in discussion.
Yeah. And they deserve to be able to.
Exactly.
That points back to the equity piece. Like, why shouldn't they? And how dare any educator actually attempt to take that away, that opportunity away from a student? That is so antithetical to what we're supposed to be doing in this industry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But we're not gonna end on that
good
note. Because real talk, we got work to do.
Oh yeah, always.
We have so much work to do. The work is never going to be done, but working hard to do that work better, more efficiently, more thoughtfully. That's the work that we need to be doing. Is knowing what is next and how do we do this thing better. And so as you continue with your consulting, I'd love for you to give a piece of advice to this generation and really encouraging folks to please go into education. Because I think our ed schools are struggling.
It's been tough.
To keep those folks enrolled. So what's a piece of advice you would give to particularly Black women educators and current leaders, entrepreneurs? What should we be doing?
Wow, what should we be doing? If I were to speak to someone who is considering going into education, I would say I don't know how many other jobs can give you the highest of highs and some of the lowest of lows. But there is something about teaching that has continued to give me endorphins since the beginning of my career that I don't think I can get from any other profession. There is just something magical when you see a student finally get a concept that they had been struggling on. I remember seeing my first group of third graders graduate a few years ago, and this is before I became a parent. And I just remember hitting and be like, "Is this what it's like to just see your kids do amazing things?" Like I was a mess. I was a mess, to just know that they have the rest of their lives ahead of them.
Just wait till you see some of them having children.
And they do.
That's where I am.
There's just such a beauty when you are in a school community that I think can just be unmatched in the camaraderie. And I think about who some of my best friends are, and so many of them it's been through I taught with them, or I did alternative certification as well, Dr. McDonald. So thinking about like the folks I did, like I was in Mississippi with, and just like you've seen me at my highest and lowest. And we just got to be in like I mean, and I had already mentioned Mississippi, but I truly am grateful for every school community that I was allowed to be a part of, because it is an honor when you are able to be a part of a school community and spend time with people's children for hours. Like that is an immense amount of trust that they are putting into you. Yeah. Now, for anyone who, I guess, as an entrepreneur, you're saying what advice I would give?
Yeah.
Be audacious and be bold. And people have said like closed mouths don't get fed, but they don't. And I am an outgoing person who historically had been shy about my business. Like, I have my business, but I don't know if I want people to know. Like, I don't know if I want to be on LinkedIn and Instagram saying it. Say it. Because I think, to our point, there are so many of us who can have such an extended outcomes and impacts on so many students, so many educators, so many leaders, that we need to name that. So start that business if you want to start that business. Take that class if you want to take that class. Start law school if you want to. Go into a doctoral program. Get your MBA. Do whatever you want, because to what we've been speaking, but our presence and our visibility are so important and are so critical for our students to see, for other colleagues and peers of ours to see. I still am shocked when people I run into are like, "Let me know if you want to hire me for your business." I'm like, "You want me? What? Really? Are you talking about me?" Like, yeah, we see what you're doing. I am blown away by that. But that you never know who's watching, and the impact that people have by just seeing you do something that was scary. Like starting my own business seemed terrifying. I had told Charlene I was very much I like my traditional job. I like knowing like when my breaks are. I like knowing I have health insurance. Like I like all these things. And starting a business is one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life. And it's also been the most liberating. And I will always choose to go under what gives me liberation.
Ooh, that's a great point to end on. Woo!
Yeah.
Get that liberation. I mean, dang, I didn't even pay you for that one. Okay.
But it's true. Go for it, y'all. Like, just go for it. Things that are terrifying. I say this to my cousin. He's in school right now. And I always say this to him: whatever feels the scariest, whether it's like a job choice, or for him, I was like studying abroad, or just any of these things that seem terrifying, lean into it. Just lean into it. Like the intuition of just doing it has never given me anything but positivity and growth. So just do it. Wow. Just do it.
Wow.
I like being whimsical anyway, so I'm just like, just do it, just do it, just do it.
I wonder if that's your millennial status too, but
It is. I'm also a Cancer, so I think this really leads into a lot of my intersectional pieces of personality here.
Well, we love it, and we are here for all of it. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank
This
you
has
all
been
so much.
wonderful for
It's
you to
been
just
great.
share your journey and your passion for what is possible
Thank you.
in improving instruction and being a coach and helping folks to reach where they don't even know they can go. Right, just having opportunity to work with you. So, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is that this school improvement is not just like bringing in a program or even just bringing in a person, right? You need to have the systems that are going to work together,
Correct.
right, to support both students and teachers. So there's not a one size fits all. It's not a plug and play.
Right.
It really has to be synergistic. So if you are an edupreneur, budding, thinking about it, Jessica says, go,
Do
just
it.
do it.
Do
The Nike
it.
version.
Do it.
Let that be your vocal stem in your head. Do it. Do it.
And move with audacity is what
Move.
she said. I love that piece, and I received that. Um, Listen, audience, thank you for being with us.
Yeah.
We're going on summer break, y'all. We taking a break, June to August. We will not be broadcasting wonderful, amazing Black women in education during those 2 months, but don't worry, we will be back in September. We got a lineup already being put together. But this has been such a wonderful episode and a great season, Jocelyn. Thank you so much for being our
Great job, y'all.
co-host. And I'm going to let you get ready to take us on out of here.
All right. Well, we want to thank you all for listening to Lead Girl, the Be Well podcast, where we amplify the voices of Black women in educational leadership. Be Well is a nonprofit organization that is open for membership for you to serve and be served. If you are a Black woman in educational leadership, we are looking for you. So become a member or support us by visiting blackwomeneducationleaders.com, and be sure to follow us on X, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
Tune in for upcoming episodes in September on a variety of topics that are sure to be relevant to your personal growth and your professional practice. And if you enjoyed this episode, let us know, like, subscribe, leave a review, share it with another leader. That's really what we want. We want folks to share this information. Or if you want to email us at bewellpodcast@gmail.com, or on social media, you can reach out at leaders_Black on all platforms. And until then, lead, girl.
You better lead.
Hey. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.